Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And some people have an adventure of a lifetime that is superseded only by their adventure of a lifetime, if you have any idea what I'm saying. And I've talked to a lot of people, haven't talked to anybody who jumped off a 105-story building and lived to tell about it. But our guest today is Steve Gamlin, and he is an amazing man. He is a very funny speaker. He does work with all kinds of different groups and people to provide them with some real positive thoughts and ideas about life and how they can live their life a little bit better. And I hope that this episode helps you live your life a little bit better because, he's a very funny guy. And all of this has to do with without humor, life would be so damn boring. I just got to tell you. And Steve Gamlin, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing great, Kevin. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I am so looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, it's going to be awesome because you have a YouTube, and you talk about being in Vegas, and jumping off. Because for those of you who have not been to Vegas, there's a tower there that is tall. I mean, it's really tall. And at the very top, I think there is a roller coaster on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But they also allow you to bungee jump off of this tower, which, by the way, I would just wet myself, and there's not a prayer in the world that I could get that done. But you did that. Congratulations. And I love your response that about halfway down, you thought about taking a pizza box and gluing it to your hand as you go by the windows of everybody. And stuff. And so it's great to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you came from and how you got into podcasting and speaking, and you also have a vision board that we have to talk about, and a way of visualizing your success that we can all use, because if you've watched The Secret and the law of attraction and different aspects of that's a really big deal, and it's a law. So it's kind of like gravity. So anyway, how did you get started in all of this?
For me, it all started when I was 11 years old, and I remember this vividly. I had 4 goals when I was 11 years old. I wanted to be a radio DJ because of a guy named Dr. Johnny Fever on a TV show called WKRP in Cincinnati, who I thought was the coolest human being on the planet. I wanted to be a stand-up comedian because Steve Martin was huge at the time with this Wild and Crazy Guy album. I wanted to be an author of my own books because my mom instilled a love of reading and writing in myself and my sister, who's not even a year and a half younger than I am. So we've just loved reading and writing our entire lives. And I wanted to be a teacher of people, but not in a classroom, because I had a 5th grade teacher named Mrs. Farron, who, whenever I finished my work early, she would encourage me to help out some of the other students that might have been struggling with the lesson. So at 11 years old, she actually had me coaching other people before I even knew what that was. She had me doing that. And I just loved how it felt to be able to have an impact on somebody or help somebody to understand a lesson just by me bouncing it off the wall, my own unique way of teaching something. So all of that, all those goals, I'm 57 now. I have actually gotten to live all of them. I worked 15 years worth of hours in 10 in the radio industry and burned out and quit. And my whole life went off the rails. This was early 2000s, around age 35. No radio career. My first marriage crumbled, and I was $62,000 in debt because I wasn't watching where the money was going.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah. And out of those ashes came, I became a speaker and a stand-up comedian at exactly the same moment. I can explain that a bit later on. and then have published 4 books and been a speaker now for it'll be 22 years this summer.
Congratulations on all of that, because I am a firm believer that the experiences of our life, both, I got a couple of points. The experiences of our lives, both good and bad, contribute to the person that we're going to become and the
Mhm.
person that we are. And as we continue to go through life, because you had a bad country music song experience, and I have too, but I think everybody does at one point or another. And each time that you go through it, you pick up valuable lessons that then you can impart and to help other people. And I know that's, I was struck two things again. Um, First of all, if you're a teacher out there, I want you to listen carefully to what Steve said, because you do not know the impact that you're going to have on somebody in your class that may be a lifelong thing. So, congratulations on being a teacher, and I hope you stay with it. And if you have passion for it, because I tell you, that story in my world it was coaches, but in yours it was a teacher. And does she know how successful you've become and all the things that you've done?
About 10 years ago, I happened to be on my cousin's page on Facebook. My cousin is my book editor. And I wanted to send her a message. And I went over and I saw her list of friends right there. And one of them was that teacher. They've stayed in touch. So I reached out with a friend request and said, "Is this the same Mrs. Farron who taught at Highland Goss Falls Elementary School in 1979?"
Good for
And I
you.
saw those little lights lighting up like she was responding. And this one line came over that still makes me laugh. And it said, "I always wondered what happened to you." And I start laughing and I type back and I go, "In a good way, right?" And then she sent back a full paragraph and she said, and this is what means the most to me. She said, "I remember you, and I did always wonder what happened to you because I saw something in you." And I sent back a thank you for being the most impactful teacher I've ever had. And then she sent back a thank you and said, "I want to thank you for making my very first year as a teacher so memorable." I didn't know it was her first year. I was one of her first students she ever taught in what turned into a 35 plus year career. So all these
Oh,
years later, we
wow.
both got to acknowledge to each other. And I did see her at an event shortly after, and I spotted her and went over, and she kind of recognized me. And I said, "Mrs. Farron." And she goes, "Steve." And I asked her if I could give her a huge hug, and I did. And it just felt so good to full circle say thank you.
If you are somebody out there and you have a teacher or a coach or a mentor that meant a lot to you, please, with Facebook now and other ways of getting in touch with people, please make sure you get in touch with them, because the part of the story that you know and they may not, and it may make their day, make their week, make their year. I have a similar story when I was in playing football in high school, and I had the coach, tower of a man, 6'5". His name was Jock McLaughlin. And in the first game of my senior year, and I had the game of my life, and so much so that the announcer actually said, Tackle made by guess who," because I'd done like 4 or 5 in a row. But what he didn't know was that my dad had gone to the game, and while he was in the lobby, he worked for Nordstrom.
Mhm.
Bruce Nordstrom, his son was on the Mercer Island team, which is the team that we were playing.
Wow.
And so they had a conversation, and then my dad went and sat on our side, and Mr. Nordstrom sat on his side. And of course, I had the game of my life and a couple of fumble recoveries, a couple of quarterback sacks, and all that kind of stuff. And the coach at the end gave me a big hug and said that you won the game, all that stuff. But what it did for my dad, he went to work the next day and he saw Bruce and he said, "I have never seen a performance like that by anybody." And it was so impactful for my dad that till the
Wow.
day he died, that he told that story about how his kid beat the kid of Mr. Nordstrom. and stuff. And so I had the opportunity to tell the coach that story years later, and he was so appreciative because you don't often hear stuff like that from
Mhm.
people. It's important that we do that for people, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh, we never know where the ripples go. And that's something I say a lot. Even if it was X amount of years ago at a game or a fifth grade English class or wherever, if we send out the best of ourselves in a moment, you played the game of your life. And it just happened to be the day that your dad was there and Mr. Nordstrom was there and you were playing against his son's team. I mean, come on, it's the perfect storm of potential right there for impact. Now, it
Yep.
impacted Mr. Nordstrom, your dad, you, obviously, because I was watching you as you relived that moment. You didn't tell the story, you relived it, which is a very different thing.
Yeah.
All these years later, I mean, look at, and those years later when you mentioned it to your coach, imagine the reward he felt. If maybe he's wondering, because we all do sometimes, did I have an impact in what I was doing for these young men all these years coaching football?
Yep. Yep.
Yes, that's a title. That's it goes from a ripple to a big wave crashing on his beach. That's just so cool.
Especially since coaches take a lot of abuse, especially high school coaches, take a lot of abuse from parents. Why isn't my son playing? Why is he that? Why did you lose? Why aren't you? And all that kind of. And he
Yeah.
ended up quitting a year later because
Wow.
he just couldn't take the. He didn't feel honored to take the pressure of it anymore. So a story like that, and then all of his friends who read that story, one gal said that she was in tears reading it because of what it meant to him and stuff. Just like your teacher that when
Yeah.
you were 11 years old, and she was like, whatever happened to that guy? He sure
Yeah.
was something. And it turns out that you have lived every moment of that. And it's I so if you are somebody that you have a special teacher or a special coach or somebody in your life, reach out to them, please,
Yeah.
because they remember you.
Yeah.
If you remember them, they remember you, and it's that is really so important.
Yeah.
That's why I think that's one of the major reasons why we're even here.
Yep. Yeah. I love this. I mean, I've had some of those moments myself over the years. About well, now it's 2025 now, so about 12 or 13 years ago, I was in between business meetings and I happened to be driving from one city to another, and I saw a grocery store right before the exit, and I thought, "Oh, I need breakfast bars." So I'll just stop now because I got 10 minutes to kill. And I'm walking down the Captain Crunch aisle at the grocery store, which is what I always call the cereal aisle because that was my favorite when I was a kid. Crunch berries, even though they destroyed the roof of my mouth,
I was just gonna
that was
say
my
that.
favorite. Yeah.
I know.
And I'm walking down, and a gentleman walks past me, and he turns around. And he says, "Hey, man, you're that speaker, right?" And I look over my shoulder. We're the only two in the aisle. I said, "Yes, sir. I'm a speaker. What do you remember?" He retold me one of my stage stories, told me the picture that was on the screen at the time, the lesson of the story, and how he had applied it a week after I spoke for his group and landed himself a job. See, it was a group of unemployed people who were, some of them chronically unemployed for several years. And I would go there. I did 43 of them for the state of Mass and state of New Hampshire, all for free. There was 85 people in the room, and this guy spots me in a grocery store. And I said, that is such a reward to me that it means the world that you just said all that. And I asked him, how long ago was that? And he went, 3 years.
Wow.
So this guy, 3 years later, sees me at a grocery store and is vulnerable and authentic and brave enough to reach out to me to say, you're that speaker, and then share that with me. And it's all these years later, I'm still talking about it, and it still makes me feel amazing. And on the low days, which there have been many over the past years, don't let anybody think that you and I have just been this meteoric rise. There's a reason I
Oh.
have a keynote stage story called "Some Days Your Phoenix Rides a Pogo Stick," because it's been a lot of highs and lows in between that we learn from, and we burn our tail feathers off, and it's a little embarrassing. And for a while, it's like wearing those chaps with the holes cut in them for a while because the
Yeah.
world gets to see us in all our glory. But we take everything we learn, and tail feathers grow back. The colors are brighter. We fly higher. And every once in a while, when somebody reaches out and says, "Hey, you had an impact on my life. I just wanted to let you know that." It seems to me that most of those happen when I'm in the ashes a little bit at a low point, and I appreciate those, which makes me want to fly even higher every time I come back, and it doubles down on my resolve to right the ship and to just keep going, growing, and showing up.
I'm a firm believer that there are, for lack of a better term, I'll just say it, spirit guides and angels and stuff who have our back.
Oh,
And they
100%.
and they recognize that. And they say, Steve needs to be uplifted today, so let's do this. And I don't know how they do it, but it's just amazing. And sometimes when you are having that day or that month, and you've quite frankly have had, and we may talk about it, we may not, but you've had quite a 7 or 8 month journey here, and I'm so grateful that you're here because because this show is going to help people, and I don't know how or when, it's not my job, but
Mhm.
somebody is going to benefit from what you and I talk about today, and it really is important. Sadly, I've got to take a quick break,
Mhm.
but when we come back, and by the way, we're talking with Steve Gamlin. Your website that you would like to talk about is.
SteveGamlinSpeaker.com.
That's complicated. No, I'm kidding. I'm surprised that was available, but
Yeah.
that's really good. And by the way, if you want to hire him, he does it remotely. He'll go do it in person. Of course, there may be a flight and a hotel involved, but you'll need to. Anyway, I need to do this break, and Ophir Adar is going to talk about feeding your white wolf. He's a real estate guy, and he's got a business, and he can help you if you're a real estate agent, really live your life and become a successful real estate agent. So watch this, please.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become seven-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Rochelle's out today, and Steve Gamlin is with us, and he's an amazing. Go to YouTube. All you got to do is type in Steve Gamlin, and he's got YouTube's up and lots of speaker things that he does. But I got to ask you, when you said 20 years ago, I'm going to leave my job and I'm going to become a speaker and I'm going to become a coach and I'm going to do all of these things. And did you have anybody in your world at that time that said, "Oh, Steve, you can't do that. What are you doing? You had a job. Just, go back and earn a living and live a quiet life and it'll be fine." But stepping out like that, are you kidding me? Did you have anybody like
Mhm.
that?
Oh, I had plenty of people like that. And there was actually a bit of a gap between leaving the radio and becoming a speaker. And during that time, of course, me walking away from my radio career did have an impact and hastened the ending of my first marriage. We'd had communication issues, and it was just burnout, frustration, and lack of communication. And it just finally just blew up because we had not made the effort to communicate better. And I was working 6, 7 days a week for most of those 10 years, and I just fried, absolutely fried. But there was a bit of a gap of about a year and a half in between until in August of '03. And my self-talk back then was brutal. This is something I talk about with people is go easy on the self-talk. Because if you look at my journals, I've been journaling for 35 years. You look at my journals from around 2002 and early 2003, I refer to myself over and over and over as Hurricane Dumbass Category 5 for what I had done to my life. And I was brutal to myself. But on a hot, humid day here in New Hampshire in August of '03, I had $3 left in my pocket on a Friday afternoon, and I decided to take out all my frustrations on a bucket of golf balls at a local driving range because that's something you can hit that won't hit back, and you can hit it as hard as you want and just get it out. And
Great way of eliminating frustration.
pretty much, yeah. So I went to the farthest tee box on the property up against the big giant fence thing because I'm a horrible golfer and I didn't want to dent anyone's car. And I was also under this long row of steel towered power lines. So I start hitting, and about 10, 15 minutes in, a big thunderstorm comes ripping through. So I am now standing under power lines, barefoot in the wet grass, hitting ball after ball after ball. And two guys that were near me who had each just showed up with a full bucket of balls, they ran from the storm. So I hit all of their balls too. So at the end of an hour, at one point, I even held the club up over my head and just swung it around and said, I dare you. Go ahead. Take your best shot. And nothing happened. So I hit my bucket, their buckets, got to my car, opened the door, and the rain stopped and the sun poked through a little crack between the clouds. And I just thought that was the funniest thing in the world. And I laughed and I smiled and I just kind of looked up and went, well played. The next day, I was on a call with a brand new life coach I just started working with. And he asked, how was your week? And I said, listen to what this moron did yesterday. And it's funny, it was very self-deprecating. It was as funny as I could tell it. I told him what I just shared with you. And when he stopped laughing, which is something a coach should not do when they're supposed to help you and your life sucks, he said, I got two questions for you. Are you this open and honest about your life with everybody? I said, yeah. And then he asked, have you ever thought of being a motivational speaker or a stand-up comedian? I think you'd be really good at both, and I think you'd enjoy them. He didn't know my 4 goals when I was 11 years old. We hadn't gotten that far yet. And I don't even know if I remembered them. But him asking me, I did. And I said, yeah, I've wanted to do those since I was a kid, but I have no idea how to pursue it. On his desk, and this is the part about being open and authentic and vulnerable with people. In his junk mail pile was a brochure from a local community college that he hadn't thrown out yet, that had a class that started 2 weeks later called Intro to Stand-Up Comedy. So I went. And then he asked if I'd ever heard of Toastmasters. And I said, well, kind of. They teach you how to be a speaker or more confident or something. He goes, yeah, you got the stories. Just go sharpen your tools. He said, there's a group that meets one town away from where you're living right now. So I went there. Wound up doing stand-up for 7 years, stayed in Toastmasters for 8, won a whole bunch of competitions, including internationally, which was a blast. And here we are, all because a coach asked me, how was your week? And I told him a story that could have ended my life, but instead gave me one.
Steve, in looking in hindsight, are you still in communication with that coach?
On occasion, yeah. And he knows. I mean, he and I've touched base several times, and I always go back to, yeah, you remember the day? He goes, yeah, tell me you haven't done that again. I said, nope, still have the golf club though.
Well, I'm a firm believer, and take this for what it will. You will. But I'm a firm believer that people come into our life at the exact right time for the exact right reason, and to send us on a path that maybe we hadn't even considered.
Yeah.
But your job was to say yes to it.
Yeah.
Because you could have said, no, I'm not going to do that. That's silly.
Yeah.
And you didn't. You did it. And it sent you on a completely different path, on a completely different journey that you're on now. And it's just amazing. And that happens to all of us. I know that it happens to every one of us. It's happened to me several times. One guy I haven't talked to in 40 years and the other guy in 20 years. And they both had significant ways of changing my life in ways that I hadn't even considered at the time. So, my thought here is say yes to life. If somebody offers you something like that, Don't poo-poo it. Don't say that you can't. I can't do it. Say okay, and say yes to it. Do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. And you are so right about the messengers and the angels, whatever you choose to believe in. That coach's name was Daniel. And that's also the same name as the friend of mine who asked me a question when I was 24. You're broken, depressed, living on your grandfather's couch. Why didn't you ever go on the radio like you wanted to? His name was also Daniel. And when I shared that about a year ago, that they had the same name on a podcast, the host said, there's a guardian angel named Daniel. Do you know what he stands for? And I looked it up. The guardian angel Daniel is the patron saint of speakers, singers, entertainers, creatives, artists, helps them to build confidence, craft their stories. Everything that those two moments led to, they had the right name tag on them for that moment. And one of the other questions that Coach Dan asked me was, have you ever heard of The Secret, which had just come out on DVD at the time?
Oh my God.
And that is how I learned about the law of attraction. Now, I didn't necessarily agree with the way they portrayed it all. The genie in the magic lamp was a little too woo-woo for me.
Yeah.
But that started me on this gut level thing about vision boards, because some guy named John Assaraf in the middle of the DVD version of The Secret for about 90 seconds talked about this thing called the vision board. And I never bought anybody's program, never read a book on it. I just started doing my own version of it. And it led to the most amazing wins in my life, the greatest of which was me finding my true soulmate. I should say she found me in June of 2007. For 3 years, I built my dream relationship on vision boards with pictures of couples enjoying the type of relationship I wanted to have. And when I'd done enough work, I wrote in my journal, I'm ready to fall in love. And 10 days later, I got an email from someone named Tina that I almost deleted because the thundering herd of squirrels in my head, each with their own harmonica, saying, hey, listen to this, distracted me. And I almost deleted the email. And the next day I opened it. It was a girl I hadn't seen or spoken to in 21 years. We'd gone to high school together. I had a crush on her in school, but never asked her out. And 21 years later, she reached out to me. And a month after that, without even a picture of her, she was in Florida at that time, and I was still here in New Hampshire. She admitted first how she'd felt about me in school and told me she loved me. And I said, I love you too. And we got to be in love for 6,386 days. The most amazing journey until she sadly passed away last December. But the reason I say 6,386 days is because I did the math. But also somebody reached out to me after the first time I shared that number, after she'd passed, and said, Steve, I'm so sorry you lost your Tina. Because I always called her my Tina. I'm so sorry you lost your Tina, but I just want to let you know how much you two inspired me. I've never had one day of what you had. And you got to have 6,386. So that's a big part of what I talk about now.
And the grief that you are in many ways still going through.
Oh, every day. Every day. But she's
And
here. She's another angel now. She was my angel the day before she died. We were in London traveling. We had just gotten there a day prior to go to a concert the day after. And for whatever reason, she was already being my angel 12 hours before she died, because I took a picture of a building across the street in London that looked like Nakatomi Plaza from the movie Die Hard,
Yeah.
which is a Christmas movie, by the way.
It is. And
It is.
Yes, it is.
We've got a local radio DJ who's got this great line every year that makes me laugh. He says, it ain't Christmas till you see Hans Gruber fall off Nakatomi Plaza. And I used her phone to take a picture of that building, and I was just laughing. And when we got back up to our room, I said, oh, baby, what's the password for your phone? Only time in 17 and a half years I had asked her that question. And she passed away the next morning. And that phone was the key to me finding everything. So if I had not asked that question, here she was already being my angel. If I had not asked that question, I wouldn't have found our hotel reservation, our flights home, the limo, the mortgage, the travel insurance policy that I wasn't even aware she had taken out. I found it in her emails. I wouldn't have been able to call her dad, her boss, her work team. Nobody. if I hadn't asked that one question. She was already looking out for me. So angels are everywhere.
Do you ever stop and think to yourself, because I do this often, how lucky you are?
Every day. I've been writing pen to paper 3 moments per day gratitude journal for about 95% of the mornings of the last 14 plus years. And even the morning after she died, I had something to be grateful for and to know how lucky I was. I was holding on to her, helping a hotel staff member try to revive her. She had ischemic heart disease. We had no idea how bad it was. When she passed, I was literally holding her in my arms. And that is something I am very, very grateful for. It was the worst day of my life. But even on those days, if you can find something you're grateful for in a moment, you're going to do okay.
That is a wonderful. First of all, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And it would be great. It wasn't meant to be, but it would be awesome if you guys were 95 and together and had that. But I know she is still with you, and she's there with you every
100%.
day, and she wants you to be so happy, and she wants you to live your life like every moment is your last day. Because quite honestly, Steve, you just don't know. My cousin-in-law, her father passed away last week on a Monday. And so she and my cousin came up to help the mom because they needed to make arrangements and all that. You know how that, you are painfully aware of how that goes.
Yep.
And she did too much. Had a brain aneurysm, went to the
Oh my gosh.
went to the ER. They sent her to a specialty hospital, a trauma center, and she had a 5-hour surgery. And right before they went in, they said, you know, it is so bad that you've only got a 50% chance that the surgery is going to work. And she said, well, you know, I've had a good life, and if that's the way God wants it, then I'm ready.
Yep.
And her husband kissed her. She went off to surgery, and he never saw her alive again.
Oh my gosh.
So you don't know how it's going to play out and how these things are going to happen. So that's the other thing. Not only do you need to be nice to your teacher to say hello, and if the people that you love, make sure they know that, and they're very, very clear about that, because you don't know.
Yep.
You don't know when the last time you're going to see them is and stuff. So but you know the thing is, Steve, is yes, it was a tragedy what happened to Tina, your Tina, but at the same time, the help and the for the next 20 or 30 years, the things that you're going to be able to tell people that's going to ring so true for them that it's going to impact and change their entire life and what they do. It's just amazing. And I know, guys, we have to take our halftime break, but we'll make it real short. Because, by the way, I go to Steve Gamlin speaker. Is it speaker?
Yes.
.com,
yes.
and have this man speak for you in your group, because I tell you, after a story like that, and after all that he does and all the funny parts of it, I can honestly say he's going to make you laugh and he's going to make you cry. We'll be right back after this.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, and Steve Gamlin is with us. Steve, you mentioned the secret, and I got to mention this to you because I had the opportunity to interview one of the principals of the video, The Secret, James Arthur Ray.
Yes.
And of course, he's the one who became a hoity-toity big-time dude and had thousands of people at his seminars and stuff. And then he had a seminar in Arizona, and they had a sweat lodge there, and that was part of the deal that everybody would go into the sweat lodge. Well, for whatever reason, 3 people ended up passing away, and he spent 18 months in jail, and it changed his life. He is now a much more grounded speaker and is not the hoity-toity guy that he was and all that in a bag of chips. He's now, but it changed him in a positive way. And so a lot of those things, they happen to us, and they can change us in a real positive way if you allow them to, if you understand. And someone like you can help people understand how to get through, because, I know people are going to say, before they heard your story, they would say, "Oh, that's Steve. I'm sure he was a radio guy, and then he was, a stand-up comic, and he's a speaker. He's had a charmed life." Well, you know what? We all have what's called life.
Yeah.
and
Charmed. I'm not sure if my autobiography would be called Charmed or not, but Charred maybe.
Well, but that's part of the growth and part of the journey that we all have, and the important part is that you had a choice in December of last year to take it in a negative way and shut down, or to fight through it and then to utilize it, because your Tina was on your shoulder saying, "Steve, you can help people, and this story can help them." So do you feel that? Do you feel that every day? Or
I do.
Most days?
Yeah. I mean, and I'll brutally honest, you talk Charmed. The last 6.5 years have been very difficult. Tina was the 4th death of somebody very close to me, including my dad. He was in 2018. And one of my business mentors also passed away. He had built the entire digital background, everything online he had created and built. So when he died, everything went. That was during the pandemic, which also wiped out both of my businesses because there were no more events going on. So my speaking and also my DJ business that I had for 28.5 years got wiped out by it. So Tina has kept me going. She believed in me on days when I did not believe in myself, and she didn't let me get down on myself for too long. And it was frustrating. And somewhere in there as well, we had a problem here at our house. And for 2 years, I was inhaling toxic black mold that was coming through the vent right above my desk in my office, because we had a vent cleaning company come when we first bought the house in 2018. When they retracted their equipment, one of the big hoses for the central air and central heat didn't have a clamp on it, and it just pulled off. And so moist air was blowing into the blown-in insulation. And when it was 120 degrees up there in the summer, it baked into an attic's worth of black mold. And we didn't know for 2 years until we had a couple water spots on the ceiling of the bathroom. Tina said, "Oh, hon, you better go check the attic." And I moved the piece of plywood and went, uh-oh. So I had to go undergo 4 months of a cellular detox program to get all the toxins out of my blood. My brain was like oatmeal at that point, and we didn't know why. I thought it was just depression over the deaths and the frustration of business. But the whole way, Tina kept cheering me on. She kept saying, "Babe, you're going to be famous." She always said famous when I was doing well and happy and business was going well. She always referred to it as me being famous. So we had a really good talk, even 12 hours before she died, down in the hotel bar. She had a drink. I haven't had alcohol for over 4 years now. And we had this really deep conversation about how fortunate and blessed we were. And she said, babe, your business, you're going to be famous again. You're doing all the work. You just got to get yourself back out there. And that was just the most wonderful conversation to have. So whenever I would tell our story, she would roll her eyes because she was not embarrassed by it, but she was just not a spotlight person. So now I tell people, I said, if you happen to be a person who sees and feels spirits and guides and angels, I said, just know right now there's a beautiful blonde, blue-eyed angel wearing fabulous shoes who is rolling her eyes at the fact that I'm sharing our story and how much it still inspires me all these days. And now there's nothing she can do about it. I'm going to tell our story and continue to share even the final moments of it.
But it is so important.
Yeah, to help other people. And I'm so inspired by it. And I just feel nothing but love from her even now. And she keeps showing up in these random ways that let me know she's right there. I mean, from a cardinal in the backyard on her birthday, which is a messenger, to certain songs coming on the radio when I'm having a tough day that were songs that were so dear to both of us. I just look up, oh, thank you, baby.
Would you explain to me how they do that? Because real quick story. This happened just the other day.
Yeah.
It happens to me all the time. But are you familiar with the Metallica?
Yeah.
And the song "Nothing Else Matters"?
That was the song I was just thinking of when you were about to say that. So yes.
The lyric of the song that means so much to me is trust in who you are and nothing else matters.
Yep.
And so I have that CD. It's the black CD, and it was in my CD player, and I'd been listening to it, and I decided I wanted to listen to the radio. So rather than continue to play the CD, I discontinued the CD, and then I went to my favorite rock station in Seattle, which is KZOK, and I clicked on it, and you know what started to play at that particular second?
Let me think.
It's how do they do that? But they do that, and the message that I got from that was trust in who you are, know who you are, and nothing else matters.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about, because we all have had, I mean, you've had I had what I call my bad country music song experience. My dad died, my dog died, my wife left, I lost my house, I declared bankruptcy, I got sued for $50,000, all in like a 3-year period, and stuff. But our job is to rise above it and to do what we came here to do, whatever that is. And we get to decide. The beautiful thing about life is we get to decide what that is. Nobody's going to tell us. We get to figure it out. And does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Oh, crystal clear sense. And it's funny because I've been on as many stages, virtual, yes, but not physical stages over these 6 months, because I've just obviously got a lot going on.
Right.
But I had a dear friend of mine reach out actually a couple of weeks ago, and she said, I got a question for you. How does it feel to know that every morning when you make a Facebook post, you're writing another page in your new book?
I was going to ask you, because there has to be a book coming. Is there a book coming?
Oh, there's definitely a book coming about this whole journey, because much of what I speak about on social media now is still, it's grief, but it's the lessons of it. It's not just saying, oh, I'm grieving today. It's not that at all. But it's all these weird, different ways, that lessons that come to me that are helping me to cope and rise back up. And this friend, whatever that day's post was, she reached out to ask me that. And she said, every day I see you're writing another page for your book. So I hope you're keeping track of all these. I said, oh yeah, they're archived. We're good. And somebody actually asked me, I think I was still in England. I was stuck there for 2.5 weeks because things are very different over there before I could get out of there. Somebody asked me, who's going to play you in the movie about you and Tina's love story? Because it's got to be made.
It does.
Yeah. I said, I don't know who's going to play me, but it won't be me.
I was thinking Richard Gere, but he may be a little too old for that.
Too old for me now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but and when we talk about um life after death, and we talk about like your Tina being with you and stuff, I've been blessed to do this as long as I have, because while you were doing your radio show and figuring it out in 2003, I was also doing radio on in Seattle, and one of my co-hosts was a psychic medium. And so and I've had literally hundreds of different people and readings and stuff, and just a really quick story, and a
Mhm.
lot of it involves people that have passed.
Yeah.
Right before I started the show in 2003, my brother-in-law's wife, I guess I would make her my sister-in-law, had a congenital heart defect and passed away.
Ooh.
So 2 weeks into the show, it was a Friday afternoon, and I said to Kim, that is her name, and I said, does the memorial services tomorrow? Does Sandy have anything to say to us? And she said, well, it's only been a couple of weeks, and they're busy on the other side. They've got a lot of stuff to do and orientate all the stuff that they do over there, and that we'll find out what that is when we get there. And she said, so she doesn't say anything, but she mentions yellow roses.
Mm.
And they said, yellow roses. Okay. So I went home and talked to my wife at the time. I said, did Sandy, she was a florist, and I said, did Sandy like yellow roses? And she said, I had no idea. So the next day, we tried to find yellow roses because we were going to meet uh, her husband, and then we were going to go to the memorial, the same place where Jimi Hendrix is buried.
Okay.
And so we couldn't find that, so we got yellow carnations. And so we went there to the memorial service, and we were standing on the parking lot, and we're in suits and dressed very conservatively. And Sandy's side came up in Harleys with colors on, and great big beards, and smoking, and stuff. And so it was a real dichotomy of the two groups. But I saw the flower truck come up to the facility, and I didn't see what they dropped off, but so we talked to everybody, and then we went in and signed the register, and then we went in and sat down, and I was dumbfounded because there were two arrangements that the flower company had dropped off. One was a beautiful flower arrangement with all kinds of different colors and stuff, but it was highlighted by yellow roses. But I was stuck by the next to that was a placard. Had to cost $500. If it didn't cost it, because it was a great big placard in the shape of a heart, and it was white carnations in the shape of a heart. And then in the middle of that heart was another heart that was yellow roses.
Wow.
And that taught me at that moment that Cindy, hey, look, I'm busy, but I'm going to be there tomorrow. And so and this is my way of was her way of letting me know that she's going to be there tomorrow, and that I can support her husband and the family in that way. It's just remarkable, the things that we get to learn and
Yeah.
and stuff. So and that's one of my favorite stories. And if you don't believe in life after death, if you don't believe that they're still with us, I got stories upon stories, and I can tell you that it's absolutely true.
Yeah, I do as well. And after the first few times Tina did show up here after I got back home, I was telling somebody about them, and this person knows a bit about that and said, that's interesting because it can take up to a year for these people to be able to show you that they're still here. And she said, the key to that is someone else is helping her. She said, it's probably your dad, because he's been gone 6.5 years, who's showing her the way, because our Peloton cycle is in her office. And the first day that I was back riding it after her funeral, one of the lights in her ceiling fan just kept blinking. Every once in a while, it would just blink and then blink a little more while I was thinking about her. And it had never done it before. And then it would not do it for a couple of days. Then it would do it again. And eventually the bulb died, which is the logical explanation of why it was blinking. But then she would show signs in a different way. And I just thought, okay, whoever's helping her out right now, thank you too.
Yes, indeed. And time is irrelevant over there,
Yeah.
and stuff. And there's nothing but love, and it's all beauty. But I got to tell. And by the way, before we get done with this, because we've got about 10 minutes, and by the way, the producer's going to be mad at me because I just blew through the break, and that's fine because I'm not going to do it. But Steve, will you come back?
I would love to. I would be honored. This is a blast. We're like old friends sitting on the front porch here, and I'm going to give you the word that I give, which is the ultimate compliment. It is effortless.
Yes.
To speak with you. So yeah, I would be honored to.
And meet you. And so, but I do want to touch on, before we leave this episode, the vision board and the work that you're doing there, because that also can have a big impact on people's lives if they trust and say yes. Tell us about it.
Yeah. The biggest thing with vision boards, and this is one of the things I learned very quickly in the early 2000s as I was putting together the basics. I've got people reaching out to me saying, Steve, I made a vision board. I go, great, send me a picture. Okay. Lamborghini, a yacht, a private jet, a mansion, a big honking gold watch, a helicopter, and a bank vault full of gold bars and pallets of cash in a bank vault. And I go, okay, that's a delightful little letter of Santa Claus that you got there. There's nothing wrong with any of these pictures. But I got a question for you. Who do you want to become over the next year? Don't just tell me what you want to get. Who do you want to become? And I've picked little bits of my journey of the past 35 plus years, personal development journey, and a simple tool called the Life Wheel that has the one that I use, and I've tweaked it for the way that I teach, 8 major areas of your life. So don't just be thinking it's an arts and crafts project that's all about getting material things, because it's not. Your life 24/7 consists of your physical health, your emotional well-being. Imagine that, setting goals for the emotions you want to feel every day. Your closest relationships, the core values that guide all of your thoughts, words, and actions. That's your internal integrity code. Your faith, if that's an important part of your life, which kind of does the same, but the authority comes from a different direction. Your connection to people in real ways. And boy, didn't that take a hit the past few years after the pandemic.
Yep.
Loneliness, depression, isolation, addiction, just horrible for a lot of people. And then your work and your money. When you start to see a full picture and set at least one goal in each of those categories just for 1 year, don't start with the 20-year stuff. You're going to scare the crap out of yourself and go back to your old habits in a week.
Yeah, that's true.
But start to and understand where you are right now in each one of those categories. Doesn't have to be pretty, but be kind to yourself in the process. There's your point A. Tell me where you want to be in each of those categories 1 year from today. And if it's a 20-year goal, great. What's 1 year's worth of progress you want to achieve? It's like we're starting an engine and doing. That's how I get people going with this. Not an arts and crafts project, not woo-woo. My style has been referred to as blue collar woo, meaning I roll up my sleeves with you. I show you how to use the tools, and we do this. We get elbow deep in the mud together and do the work. And that's why I created the program I created. It's 10 audio modules guided by my voice. It is actually the exact steps that I took to take my life from garbage to the most amazing version of my life that I've ever enjoyed. And whatever's most important to you, my opinion, geographically, make that the center of your board, and everything else will start to logically appear where you put it, working outward from there. But you've got to take care of your whole self. It's not just a quest for material stuff. I know, and I have known millionaires who are among the most miserable human beings on the planet.
Yep.
Because they went for the money, thinking they could just put the rest of their life on hold while they achieved it. And what they found out after they achieved it, they had ignored their health, their relationships, their core values. Some people think it's okay to screw people over for money and trip people on the way up the mountain. Well, I would rather hit the peak of that mountain with a whole bunch of people with me so we can all go, wow, together and thank each other for getting there. So that's how I treat vision boards versus just the arts and crafts thing with what I call the vision board starter kit with all that material stuff on there.
It's not about the material possessions because, they can come and they can go,
Yeah.
but it's about the relationships. It's about being kind and caring and loving to other people.
Mhm.
If you can practice that on a daily basis, you're never going to have another bad day again because people respond to
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
because it's so rare. And you can be the light, you can be the one.
Yep.
And trust in who you are because nothing else matters. I can't get that song out of my head.
My rule, I have a very simple rule. Wherever I am, I try to leave a plus sign trailing behind me. And it was a lesson I learned from observing. He never even verbalized it. Observing one of my grandfathers, who was one of the most kind and gentle souls you could have ever met. I mean, if he was driving through your neighborhood after a storm and a tree branch broke a picket on your fence, he would go home. He was a lifelong carpenter, cabinet maker, finish carpenter. He would make a picket. If he had the same color paint as your fence, he would paint it. He would go to your house, whether or not you were home, and he would fix your fence, and you would never know that Al Dion had been there. He just left plus signs trailing behind me. So wherever I am, even when I go to the grocery store, which is like my social life now because, I'm electric. Friday nights, I go do groceries, but I'll return a shopping cart or hand one off to somebody or take one with somebody putting their last bag of groceries in and they got kids in the car, so they don't want to be walking away. It's not safe. So I'll ask, hey, would you like me to return that? And everybody has just been, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And you see their smile. And I say, hey, make sure you take your purse out of there before I get over there, miss, because see all these cameras? I do not want them capturing you beating the heck out of me in the parking lot because you're tiny and I'm big, and that would be embarrassing. They're laughing. I'm laughing. It's an act of kindness. I don't know how their day was. They're walking away with a smile. I'm getting extra steps in my exercise. And then I can even hand that off to somebody else walking in the store if I don't need it. So wherever we are, we have an opportunity. Like you said, nothing else matters. Just be kind in that moment. Think of one way. And the best part is I'll never run out because I own the factory. That's a cool way to go through life every day. If you think your life is struggling, just go be kind. Share a smile. It costs you nothing.
Yeah, I tell the story just real quick. I drove a bus for 12 years in Seattle, and it was
Oh,
an
wow.
articulated bus, and there may be 60 or 80 people on it. I could change the attitude of the entire bus by my attitude. If
Yep.
I was upbeat and happy, the bus was a lot happier because of the energy. And they're now proving it's a great thing. They're now proving that energy is real, consciousness is real. All the things that we're talking about ain't woo woo. It is reality. It really is real, and stuff. And I really appreciate you coming here and talking to us. And you're gonna have to come back and give us your information one more time because I want somebody to reach out and book you.
Nice and easy online. The website is stevegamlinspeaker.com. And on social, I spend most of my time on Facebook and LinkedIn. If you just look up Steve Gamlin, Gamlin.
And I got to tell you, a lot of people tell me I have a great radio voice. You do too. So
I wish I had it when I was actually in the radio industry. I was afraid to use my voice till year 8 of 10. I'm serious. No confidence.
Really?
No, I did not have this voice back then. This is just me being natural, which I was, I was so scared to even be on the microphone back then until I had to be. And then I tried to sound like a DJ for 4 days. And I'm like, okay, this plug is going to get yanked. And early one morning, I just went, New Hampshire's Classic Rock, Big 101.5, Steve here. I may suck as a DJ, but if you tolerate me reading the weather for the next 42 seconds, I'll play you a kick-ass rock song. My boss came down, stuck his head in the door with the biggest smile I'd ever seen him wear. He goes, brother, that was the best thing you said all week. Just be yourself. And then he was gone. That has impacted my life ever since. And this is the voice that came from that.
Again, an angel in the form of a human that just sent you on in a great way. Yep. Steve Gamlin, thank you so much for being here. And you're going to have to come back because we ain't done, my friend. We've got more to do.
Yeah, I am honored. And thank you so much for offering this opportunity for me. And I do sincerely hope that somebody out there is going to wake up tomorrow morning and just think one more positive thought, say one more positive word, especially about yourself, please, and take one more positive action from this. So I'm honored to have been here. Thank you.
And they will. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin@kmmedia.pro.